We're going to go ahead and get started here. First things first, did everyone get checked in at the front? Raise your hands if you didn't. Okay, awesome. You're all disciplinados. Love it. So as always, I'm going to start with my quick PM talk. If you've heard it before, just bear with me. If you haven't, please pay attention. This one is extremely important because since this is our last web dev workshop, I'm going to ask you guys to fill out a survey for me, and you guys have to fill out that survey and have gone to all 3 of these workshops in order to get your special Explore merch. So please listen up. So Explore, we've been doing a little bit differently this year. Like I've mentioned, we're doing this cohort style, and everyone is still able to attend all of the workshops. They're still open to everyone, but at the beginning, those intro workshops, I asked you guys to fill out that interest survey and pick 2 cohort tracks between web dev, game dev, AI, and hardware. And like I've mentioned, they're all going to repeat again after spring break. So if you guys are interested in different tracks that you didn't get a chance to try out this time, you'll have a chance to do those again. And the same tracks that you already took will repeat, and we'll likely have different projects for those as well. So you can still come on back and get some more projects for your resume. Right, so all of the tracks are closed for now. The first cohort has ended. As of Sunday, we closed up hardware, but they're gonna open back up next week, Monday, and you guys will see an announcement for that to sign up for all of the after spring break workshops, okay? So if you can scroll down for me, guys. Okay, this might be a little bit chungus because of the board, but everyone take out your phones right now. If you have already filled it out for game dev, you're fine. You don't have to fill it out. But if this is your last workshop for a particular track, please fill this out now. This is really, really important for us to get metrics on how we're doing and to see if the program is really having the impact that we want it to have and make sure that we can make any improvements that we need to for future iterations. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to do that now. If you have not done this, you will not get your pins. And I mean, I'll probably be nice and give it to you if you fill it out later. But please do it now to save me the hassle because I'm going to be compiling all that data during the workshop so we can see who gets their little web dev pins. So I'll give you guys a second to do that before we move on. And again, if you already filled it out, please don't fill it out again because you'll have your tracks to select there. So I already know if you filled it out for a different track because you already have listed both of those tracks for me. I wish we had music. Yeah. Okay. What, the music? No, that'd be so distracting. Okay, so I'm going to hope that most of you guys finish that up. If not, please do so while I continue to talk about our upcoming events. And if you didn't get a chance to, again, just find me when I'm giving out the pins. If you guys did attend all 3 workshops, I want to make sure that we get your feedback and that you guys get your merch. So can you scroll down for me, Rosaline? Okay, so I just want to go over some upcoming events for this week. So we have our, I think, second cohort workshop for AI. It's going to be creating a house price predictor model. That's going to be tomorrow at 4 p.m. in PG5 134. So if you guys are interested, you guys can scan it. All these things are also on the Discord and as well on our Explore Hub. So it's go.fiu.edu/ExploreHub. I have a whole calendar there. We have all of our live streams, all of our Notion docs. So if you guys are interested in anything else and you miss these QR codes here, you can always go find that info there or basically any of our social media or communication platforms. Can you?
1 second, my mouse is frozen.
Oh no.
No, literally frozen. Okay, where's the page? Okay, there we go.
Okay, go down to the hardware one. And then next Monday, we have our second hardware workshop, second cohort hardware workshop. We're going to be bringing your hardware to life, which I think is just input and output, doing some fun things with the Arduinos. That's going to be same as always, 4 p.m. Mondays, PG6 116. So if you're interested in that, you can scan it out. But again, all this stuff is on our Luma and all of our socials and posters. You see us everywhere. Scroll down to the next one. This is a really special event that we have. Can you zoom out a little bit so they can see the name? So it's going to be a Valentine's Day event. It's going to be in collaboration with WIX, the Women in Computer Science. We're going to make paper flowers and some little Valentine's Day cards. It's going to be on Thursday in GC 277, and I think it's going to be at 2 p.m., but I forgot to write that. If you guys are interested, if you guys haven't made anything for Valentine's Day, or if you guys just want candy and cookies, you guys should pull up. It's going to be cutie. So yeah, and then one last thing I wanted to mention, I didn't put QR codes because I didn't want to like overwhelm you guys with too many things to scan, but I did want to shout out our REACH program. You guys are in these introductory workshops, which is awesome. You're building up your skills, building up your portfolios. REACH and Build are kind of the next steps. So REACH helps you do interview prep, and it helps you do career readiness prep. So behavioral interviews, resume building, all of these important skills that you guys kind of need that are the next steps to getting those internships and those opportunities that you want. So when you guys finish with these Explore workshops, if you're looking to take that next step, I would recommend going to the REACH events. They have like alternating dates between Thursdays and Fridays. I think this week it's on Thursday, next week it'll be on Friday, and they alternate between your technical interview prep, so that's this week, and then your career readiness weeks. So yeah, that's basically all I have for you guys. I'm gonna hand it over to our web dev ETLs.
Sweet, round of applause for everyone. Yeah, Nicole, program manager.
Also, we have cookies. I'm gonna put them in the back for you fatties, if you want any.
Okay, we're gonna get started. One thing, while we're having like our introduction, like theoretical presentations, for those of you who have been to our previous workshops, please do get out your project folder and open it up in VS Code. Make sure you have Git ready, just in case you haven't downloaded it yet. Please do start downloading it. And since we're going to be using the Spotify API today, make sure that you're logged into your Spotify accounts on the website. If you don't have a Spotify account, just make one. That's all.
Can you write the go.fau.explorer? Can you write that go.explorer?
Yeah, sure. Are these Sharpies? These are Sharpies.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a highlighter.
Don't worry about it.
Try that again. Hi, everyone. Hi, awesome. Okay, I want to do a quick feedback really quick. I want you to raise your hand if you've been to 3 of our workshops. Oh, that's a good amount of hands. Okay, awesome. Okay, so you guys will be able to follow along. Welcome, guys. This is going to be our 3rd and final workshop of this cohort. We're going to be touching on API and deploying projects. Who here has ever used an API or deployed a website before? Show of hands. Okay, cool. So that's good. So you guys are going to learn something by the end of this workshop. So for those of you who this is your first workshop, Rosaline is going to write on the board where you guys can go to find the resources during this cohort, this workshop. It's going to have all the resources you guys need, including the code, the resource links that we'll be visiting, and anything that you guys might need for this workshop. So first things first. Boop, boop, boop. Check-in, announcements, and then workshops we're going to be doing. Rosie, you want to do the icebreaker?
Yeah. Okay. You heard this question already, but I'm going to ask it one more time. Who here has actually used an API before? More hands. Everybody here has indeed used an API, whether or not they know it, and usually use these for applications. If you've ever used Spotify, actually, pretty much everything you do there is through your API. So you can take it away.
Awesome. Okay. So what's an API? Well, looking at the board, application programming interface. What does that mean? Right? Well, when we think of application programming interface or an API, it's pretty much a set of protocols or code that we're pretty much writing in our code base that's going to communicate to other servers, databases, personal code, and then returning that code back to us in a JSON, right? So for example, on the board, right, we have equality, directions, time zones, and an Instagram scraper, right? What does this mean? Well, different companies such as Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and other companies, even startups, will actually create APIs for other developers like us to use. I've actually had experience with the directions API, so if you guys ever use Google Maps, you guys know when you guys put in like the directions to somewhere, that's calling on a Google API to give you the directions to go somewhere. And that's publicly used for other people to use. Some of them are free, some of them are charged. So depending on what API you're going to be using is dependent on the kind of program you're going to be using. And I actually want to show you guys a website that you can also find on the Explorer Hub. It is, if we'll open up.
You got to stop the presentation.
Oh, well, let me stop the presentation. How do I stop it? This way?
And then end slideshow.
Boop.
Okay.
Okay, so if you guys look on the screen, this is a website that's pretty well used. It's called Rapids. Pretty much it's an API collection library that's free to use to everyone. And if you go on it, you can explore and stuff, but what I really want to show, right, is all these different APIs. So if you look, you'll see API for football, Instagram Synco, financials. Anything you can think of under the sun, there's an API for it, right? So when you think of getting bank information, security features, it could be installing some random package that you don't need or may want to use later on, there's an API for it, right? So why is this important? Well, given that we have a Spotify data visualizer, we want to make sure that the code that we're using is going to be coming from Spotify. So we're explaining these concepts and these topics, so that way when we're coding up later down the line and showing you, you guys know what we're calling on. Awesome. So how do we do that? How do we talk to the API, or how do we talk to the servers that we're trying to get the information from, right? How do we get the JSON? Well, there's one of 4 ways. There's multiple ways, but 2 of the ones that we're going to be talking about right now, or 4 of them, is get, post, delete, and
Put.
put. Thank you. So for example, so for get, right, you can think of as like getting information, right? So when you think of retrieving certain data from a function, from a banking API, you're going to get transactions. Flight API, you can be getting statuses, delays, different information depending on the company that you're trying to get the API for is going to affect how you're going to do it. So you can get a list of jokes, and for the Spotify Web API, we're getting the artists as well as the albums as well. So if you guys remember how we were kind of setting up the HTML and CSS, when you start seeing how the code that we're providing you guys, and we're going to be coding along, you're going to see why those fundamentals are important, especially the JavaScript that we did last workshop when we start coding up the API requests. Another one that most people use is post. So that one's if you want to modify or update something. So you can think about like transferring money or unified communication, so like sending messages to someone or sending a ticket or updating stuff. That's what we're going to be using post for. So these are just some high-level topics that when we start coding along, you'll start seeing them as we're coding. So next slide. Another 2 that we're not going to go too deep in is put and delete. So you can think of as put as updating, replacing existing source on something that on a server that you're communicating to. I've never used it, but it's very common. And then delete. So if you're trying to delete some sort of information that may be bugging out the system, or if you're trying to make sure that the code that you have is up to date, you can use a delete request. So next slide. Awesome. So another thing we'll be touching upon, you'll start seeing is endpoints, right? So we're communicating with the API. What are we grabbing? What are we doing? So what we're grabbing are the endpoints, right? So depending on the API that you're using, it's going to provide you different parameters, different information depending on what the API's purpose is. For in this example, for Spotify's web API that we're going to be using today, it's going to be giving us artist IDs, song IDs, and a bunch of others. But those are multiple parameters, more endpoints that you can go on. If you go on the Spotify web API, and you look down, you'll see a few that we'll have available there. But we're only going to be touching album, artist, and song. So that's a little idea of what the kind of thing. So if you think about it, we have the API code on our local machines. We're going to be making a code, a get, I think, right?
Yeah, we're doing get and we're doing post.
Yeah, we're doing get and post, and we're basically creating an API, which is a set of protocols that's going to call upon the servers of Spotify Web API, that's going to grab some endpoints, such as artist, song, and album, and then it's basically returning it to us in a JSON form that we're going to be converting into an object. That data that we had, if you guys remember that long list of Spotify song files, we're going to be converting that into objects that when you press the visualize button, it's going to convert that into a visualization. So,
ready?
Yep.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, usually when you're actually accessing some sort of application, some sort of website, you're going to be making some sort of call to their API endpoint at some point in time. For example, like Skylar said, maybe if you want to see like how much money you have in your bank account, you got to make a GET request for your actual bank account information to access that account. The thing is, usually when you're doing those sorts of things, you probably notice you have to authorize yourself in some sort of way. Usually, like for example, with a login with your email. If you're like using GitHub or something, you're probably going to connect to Git, and et cetera, et cetera. So what we have to do to access most APIs is to authenticate ourselves. For this specific API, the Spotify API, it's OAuth specifically. So that's why you have to make your that's why you have to log into your Spotify account. because the authorization is within that account. But other APIs use this thing called an API key. It's going to be a very special and unique key that allows you to access their API specifically. It's traced back to your information, and you can usually either request them, or for us, we're going to request it after we log into our accounts. And these keys are typically very sensitive. If somebody else has your API key, they can take advantage of it, make calls in your name. So, you typically don't want that to happen. You want to keep your API key secret and private, because of course, they can make any sort of request they'd like to, but also because these APIs typically are rate limited, meaning that you can only make a certain number of requests for some given time period. Some applications only let you make a certain number of requests entirely, like after that you have to pay. Some others refresh your API request after maybe a few hours, a few days, for example. Some aren't necessarily rate limited, but they still might manually disable your key if you're abusing it and making like thousands of requests a second, and that's just overloading their servers. So typically, we try to keep our keys secret with API security. The most common way you're going to see this done is with a .env file. We're not necessarily going to use a .env file for this specific project, but just for best practice, typically what you're going to do is to put it in that .env file, which is going to make an environmental variable for you, and you're going to import that API key into your actual code. So that way, for example, when you're hosting it, when you deploy it, when you put it to GitHub, nobody else can see that key, nobody else can access that key. Another thing we also use for API security is to put those .env files or any other files of sensitive information into a .gitignore file, which just simply means that whenever we're going to actually post something to GitHub to push our code there, any file that's linked in that gitignore is not going to be pushed. So you don't have to worry about accidentally committing it and putting it onto GitHub, and now everybody can see it, because of course, once you put something to GitHub, it's not going away. And so yeah, we're going to definitely be using that .gitignore file to ignore the JavaScript file that we're going to put our API key into. But of course, best practice, again, for your reference, is to use a .env file. So with that being said, to access, again, this API, you do need an API key. So that's what we're going to get right now. So
yeah, we can't stress enough how important it is to keep your API keys. The way we're doing it because the file that we're trying to do, you have to use Node, and we don't have time to install Node with a .env file. So we're going to be doing it a different way. But in practice, we want to make sure that you guys know that you always want to make sure your API keys and your client secret keys are kept in a .env file, because it's kind of like a key to your credit card. And if someone gets access to your API key, then people can use your API key, and then you can get charged like a lot of money depending on the service, especially if you don't have like a rate limit set. So for example, if you use like Firebase, like Firebase features and consoles and stuff like that, and you don't set like a limit, and then you just leak your API key, someone else can use that and use it for like other APIs and features.
yeah, especially if you like purchase like some sort of enterprise access to somebody's API, somebody gets access to that key, and then all of a sudden they're making thousands of requests in it, and the charge is going to your bank account. You definitely don't want that to happen. Of course, we're not going to worry about that. Spotify's API is free for our purposes, and we are not going to get charged.
It also expires like within an hour. So
yeah.
If you guys have issues with it not working after this workshop, it's because it expires. So you just have to replace the key.
Mm-hmm. So to get started, I'm going to go to Spotify's developer site. I can just look up Spotify like web API.
If you don't see it on the Explorer Hub as well, we have a link as well where you can find the page that you have to go to.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just look up Spotify web API. And I'm going to click the first one. It just says Web API, Spotify for Developers. And you're going to see this lovely screen, which is just simply their introduction to the Web API. I'm already logged in, so my account is here. I'll give you guys a few seconds, especially just in case you're not quite logged in yet. Mm-hmm. Everybody with me? Good? OK, perfect. And I'm going to go up to my accounts up in that corner, and I'm going to click Dashboard.
Let's go cake.
Yeah, I call all my accounts cake. I already have an app here, but likely when you first enter your dashboard, it's going to be blank. And I'm going to create an app, because Spotify's API specifically works through applications. I'm just going to call this app name like something related to our product, is Spotify Visualizer. Oh, right, yeah. A part of their content policy is that you can't actually rename your own applications after Spotify within your apps. So I'll just name it Data Visualizer. I'll just give the app description something simple.
If anyone's stuck while we're coding or while we're going through, don't feel afraid to raise your hand and we'll come by and help you out.
Give you guys just a few seconds to catch up. We'll leave the website blank. That's totally fine. It's not like we're actually, it's not like we're an like enterprise. We're just learning purposes, so we don't need to put in specific websites. And for the redirection URL, it's already here. But because we're hosting this website locally currently, our redirection URL is just going to be localhost 3000, which is just our current machine. And on port 3000, because that's where live server is hosting us. I'm going to add that. Everybody good so far? Okay. We're going to be using the web API specifically, but we don't have to necessarily specify one at this point. Of course, agree to the developer terms and services, as usual. And once I've entered in all of that information, I'm going to click Save. Oh, what? That's fun. OK, there we go. Must have been a Wi-Fi issue. Let me just make sure.
You want to talk about the feature, like the feedback, what that is on the dashboard?
Yeah, of course. Typically, when you're using these APIs, you're going to be expecting other people to be using your application as well. So typically, like, yes? Oh, OK. Yeah, so typically, you're going to be able to see usage statistics for your actual application. Here, Spotify lets you see how many users typically access your application, especially by month. The amount of requests, especially if you want to make sure that you are staying within your rate limits, and also the country that the request is coming from. Of course, since Spotify does limit its access to certain countries, you want to know like where your user base is. So that's just a general rundown of the dashboard, specifically for Spotify's API. Not every API service will come with this, but Spotify does, so that's really nice for us developers. So once you guys are here, and you're on your dashboard home, you are going to go to Settings.
Oh, no, you got to do the web.
And you are going to get this massive list of information. What we really need is the client's ID and our client secrets. Yeah, in the terminal, but don't run it yet because it's not complete.
Oh yeah, so just keep it in the
Yes.
terminal, don't run it yet.
Sorry, the client ID? The client ID just it specifically identifies just your app. Yeah, it's just an identification string. No, you're gonna need it like in a few minutes. Just like once everybody's got their APIs open. But yeah. And then, sorry? Wait, sorry, I think I saw it. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Like HTTPS.
The account is not ready? Can you press save? Okay. Did you just make this account?
Yes.
Oh shoot, I hope they don't have like an authentication thing in the shape where they don't let you. How do you refresh the page on Mac? Yeah, try typing. I want to say try typing that information one more time. That's, yeah, I should probably test out if this does account. That's something like that. While you're doing that, I'm going to try to help her. Dang. Oh, sorry. Sorry, was it somebody? It's in the terminal command line. So you would open up your terminal.
Yeah, this one. So you can close it and then start it over.
Yeah, new terminal is fine. And then you put it there.
And you can just copy that URL.
Yeah, don't run it yet. Don't run it yet. No, yeah, it's no. Don't when you take the actual terminal command, the curl. Don't run it yet. We haven't completed it. It's the template, not the actual. It's not filled with your actual information yet. So if you try it, it's just going to return an error because you need your client's ID and your secret is that. But once you show the client secret, yes?
When you get a moment, can you show them how you added the redirect URLs for maybe people that might have missed it from localhost?
Yeah, so for that placeholder where it said your client secret, we're going to show our client secret, copy paste this, and also fill in that portion. I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a few seconds, and then after that I'll repeat how to sorry, my goodness. Okay, I'm going to repeat the redirect URL. For those of you who already know it, the redirect URL is going to be localhost 3000. I can show the link again. But if you already know what localhost 3000 looks like, again, that's the link. And it's, yeah, down here, localhost 3000.
Understand, and then save. And there you go. And then just when it loads, follow on. Actually, Rosalie, could you go back to the localhost? I'm just gonna write on the board.
Okay, yeah, it's right there.
Okay. Just for, because I see a lot of people are missing that part.
I can put it on like a sticky note.
I'm just gonna write it on the board
Yep.
for now. Wait, can you pull it up really quick so I can look at it? So I make sure I get it right. Okay. HTTPS. That's it. Yeah, there's people who got stuck there.
Okay, yeah.
You're doing amazing.
I'm losing my voice.
Really, your voice?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
you're doing
happens.
amazing now. But I would just say, like, slow down a little bit because when someone misses one step.
Yeah, no, everything. Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
But
Okay.
you're doing great though with like, hey, if anyone's stuck and all that stuff. I think
Okay.
you're killing it right now. But
Okay. I'm gonna walk. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I'm gonna walk around just one more time, make sure everybody's with us, and then after that we can request
If
our
anyone's not
API
at this
key.
point or still stuck, raise your hand. We'll come around.
Yes. Was it you?
Oh, no, it was her.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I just like, no, I don't understand, like, what are we doing with the terminal? Like, how do I get there? Like, what do I do from here?
Oh, okay. If you. Oh, is this like full screen though? This is kind of cool. Okay. Sorry. Shoot, I don't know how to access the terminal on a Mac, but if you open here. and I'm going to copy my actual client's ID. I'll just use the copy button. I'll head back to the terminal, and I'm going to paste it after that equal sign. So now the placeholder code that said your client's ID is filled out with my actual client's ID. I'll do the same thing for the client secret. I'm going to copy paste it first. Just copy that.
So read it. But
I'll head to
I would copy that
the
code and
ends.
then go back in.
I'll remove the boilerplate that says your client secret, and then I'm going to paste it right there. Give everybody a few more seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anyone's stuck with putting in the client ID or secret ID, you can come around. Okay.
Also, this did like trip me up one time earlier. There's an and sign here between the client's ID and client secret. Don't delete it. It's going to return an error. I messed that up once.
Oh, no, that's not it. Is that terminal? I think that's terminal. Yeah, I think it's Command V, yeah. So you use Command V to put the curl request and then you replace
About the template you have ready for the API call. Like, where do you get this? Like, you just make it?
Spotify developer, the web API, it has documentation. And in the getting started part of the documentation, it goes through step by step of how to use this to actually get the API key. So yeah, this comes from the documentation.
Okay,
Damn, bro. Is there like a straightaway? Is there like a straightaway you can get like hit 37? Oh, you're following? So that's in your
for the access token.
Oh, press enter.
So it'll be this right here?
Sorry?
It'll be this right here?
Yes. Perfect. Nice. And I'm going to copy it one more time because I took it off my clipping board. And we're going to now start coding. So I'm going to open up VS Code. Oh, I already have it open. Lied. Pretty much all of the code we're going to be doing today is going to be in script.js. Did anybody not have their project open? Like, does anybody not have the code at all? If this is your first time and you don't have the code, we have the starter code up in our Intro to JavaScript section. It's just 3 files, the HTML file, CSS file, and our JavaScript file. You can just copy paste those, put them into your own files.
We also have the picture logo one and the data one as well.
Yeah, those two. So I'm going to show you actually the website completed as it is. Or rather, that is the current website. Just to show you what we're going to be programming first, if this would start.
Were you able to get it?
Okay. And the first thing we're going to be adding is a nice button to the very ends of our last 3 buttons and a HTML form in it, so we can actually start searching for artists. So, which project? Okay, yeah, this one.
Quick note, if you guys are stuck doing like the curl request, it might be because you guys are in Windows PowerShell. Make sure you guys are in the command prompt because some people had that issue as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If PowerShell doesn't work for the curl request, but if you use it in command prompt, just type in CMD into your Windows search. Yep. You should be able to do it just fine there. You shouldn't run into that error.
Client ID equals your client ID.
Right section.
In there, you're going to put your client ID. Yeah, don't read the and or equals.
So the first thing I'm going to do is just edit our index HTML file just a little bit. The only thing I need to do is go to our section that's called result section, and I'm going to go to these this string of 3 buttons, and I'm going to add a 4th one called search.
There you go. So save that somewhere because it expires after an hour. Your ID token's right there. Yeah.
I'm going to give this button a class that's the same as the other ones, Spotify button. And then result button.
The quotation marks. Yeah, it's just the numbers and letters.
That's got it. Everybody good? Okay. So once I've made that edit, we should have another button on our page.
You can also just go into.
And there it is. So now we can go ahead and add the functionality for this button. Simply what it's going to do is that when we click on it, it's going to show us a form. I'm also going to, before I actually make that form, I'm going to actually import our API key before we lose it. So I'm going to make one, actually, wait, sorry, give me 1 second. What's the best way to do this? I think for now, I'm going to make a constant variable. I'm going to call it API key.
Yeah.
And I'm going to set it equal to this API key that we just got.
Go back to Explore Hub and then go to the Intro to JavaScript. In that notion, it's going to have all the it's going to have the HTML.
Just so we don't lose it. And then after that, I'm going to add the show form function. So function.
Intro to JavaScript.
I'll name it show form. No parameters, and I'll open up brackets.
So you just pop this.
This show form function is pretty much going to be entirely HTML, CSS, and very, very basic JavaScript. We want to focus on APIs, and I don't want to run out of time. So I did provide the actual code for the show function form on the Notion. So I'm going to actually copy paste that and tell you about the show form function. I don't want to waste too much time going through the code line by line. So I will go to the Explore Hub. And under our APIs and deploying Notion, if you go down to the JavaScript section, there's going to be one drop-down that says show form and card displays. It is this function that we need. While you guys are accessing it, I'm just going to simply run through what this code does. Very simple. We're just going to get our result card. We're going to empty out its elements, so just in case we showed a chart before, we just get rid of that because we don't really want to see it right now. And we're going to make a new div elements, and which has our form code in it. For HTML forms, just in case you haven't seen them before, they're encased in form tags, and they typically have an ID, so you can select them. Pretty much every input in an actual form is going to have a label and the actual input type. In this case, we want to be able to search up artists. So I made a label, and that's for artist inputs. And I just simply said search for an artist as the actual text. The input type is going to be text because, of course, we want to be able to search up strings. The name is going to be artist. We need to give it a name attribute so we're actually able to edit the fields. The ID is going to be artist input. We're going to need that so we can actually select our elements. And I gave it a placeholder of Taylor Swift. You can't see it at the end. It might be wrapped around over there. But the placeholder just simply shows you like if you've ever put in if you've ever done like another form before, for example, and you saw like a first name field and it said like John and a last name field that says Doe. That's pretty much what we're doing here. There's just going to be a placeholder text that says Taylor Swift. And of course, at the very end, we're going to have a button of type submit, which just simply means that every time we click this button, we submit our form. And I made the ID submit button so we can select that as well. And the text inside of it is search. I prepended it to the beginning of the results card, so it's the first thing that shows up. And then after that, you can see there, I'm getting the form element by its ID, and I give it an event listener to listen for the submit event. So every time we click this button, it's going to send a submit event, and it's going to actually do our handle submit function.
And then when you get that done, you should be able to follow on the other stuff. If you need help
So I'm going to go, and I'm just going to copy paste this. Again, because it's just simple HTML, CSS, and this is the APIs workshop. We don't want to spend too much time on that. So I'll copy it, I'll go, and I'll paste it. I can just paste it straight over, yeah. I'm pasting these at the very top of our JavaScript file, right under my API key. And then, of course, to actually submit our form, we have to give it a handle submit function. We can't just simply say handle submit and just hope it does what we want it to do. I did also provide that. Nope, not there. Or maybe I didn't. Probably didn't.
Roland, can you show one more time where you got the code for the
Yes.
album?
So we're going to go to Explore Hub. So go.fiu.edu/Explore Hub. Scroll down. In the web development section, intro to APIs and deploying. JavaScript. And then it's the first drop down, which says show form and card displays. All good? Okay. I did not provide the handle submit function, so we're going to actually do it ourselves. Yeah, I didn't provide it for a good reason. Okay. So I'm going to make a constant. I'll call it handle submit. And I will make it equal to an anonymous function, which is going to have the parameter of event, which is simply, since we're actually going to, this function is going to trigger every time an event happens, so of course we need to pass in that event. I'm going to put in an equal sign and a greater than sign, or less than sign. an arrow sign, and I'm going to open up brackets after that. That's just simply arrow notation for an anonymous function. So within this, I'm going to first call events.preventDefault with a capital D. I hope you guys can see that. Is there any way? Do you think there's
Do
any
you guys
way?
need the code zoom in, or can you guys see from where you guys are? Everyone good?
Okay, I think that'll work.
Yeah, they also have the screens back there too.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll call event.preventDefault because the default behavior of HTML forms is that every time you submit them, they're going to refresh. We just want to prevent that because we don't want the actual page to refresh. So we're going to prevent that default behavior.
Good. Yep. Awesome. Do you have
After
that
that, I'm going to select our form.
do you
So
have
I'm going to make a constant, call it input form.
Okay,
And I'm going to go into the document object. And I'm going to get our form element by ID.
scroll down.
We gave it the ID of artist input.
See it at the bottom. There you go. Okay.
So I'll select that.
Here. Here. Yeah, click it.
I think it was kind of better where it was
No.
But
that makes it a little blurry.
Down here actually, it's extensions. Yeah.
no, that's
And then
good.
you live server.
And then if I zoom in like that, does that make it better?
That just basically lets you get a deployment that you can solve.
Okay.
Right there.
I hope that cutoff isn't like bothering people.
When you install it, yeah. It's gonna allow you basically to click a button and it brings you up what you're deploying. But when that's downloading.
So in this input form, we're actually going to be able to access any values that we put into our form, to our like text field in that form. We can do that by making a constant. I'm just going to make this constant called artist requested
Go live now. That's awesome.
because this is going to be the name of the artist that the user inputted for searching. I'm going to set it equal to input form dot value, which just simply means go into my form, like when I submit my form, go into it, select it, and return me back the value that has been put into it. Give everybody a few seconds to catch up.
Where do you have it? Is it here? Oh, there it is.
And then after that,
So you have it here.
because we're going to be actually searching up these artists using the Spotify API, then of course, once we have the actual name of the artist we want to search for, we want to go make an API call and search for that artist. So I'm going to assume that the next step is going to actually do that.
So this is what our code looks like.
So I'll make a constant, and I'll name it artists. You'll see why in a second. And I'm going to set it equal to search artists with the artist requested as the parameter.
Because it imports it into different functions, so they can.
We haven't written this code up yet, but search artist is going to actually contain our API call to our API endpoints, which is going to return back a list of artists that match the name of the artist that we sent to Spotify. So for example, if you typed in Taylor Swift, then hopefully the first search is going to be Taylor Swift's information. Then maybe it's probably going to be like an artist related to Taylor Swift. I think when I tested out, like the next one was Sabrina Carpenter, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just going to simply actually make that request to Spotify, and they're going to send back any artist with the name that matches or similar.
That actually doesn't have code, so you have to follow.
Now, the one thing you have to note about APIs is that when we make the actual API request, it's going to be asynchronous, meaning that when we run our handle submit function and then we call search artists, that asynchronous function call has no obligation to finish before this method ends. Meaning that like handle submit can finish running, but our API call is still working. Spotify hasn't quite sent back that data yet. So we don't want that. We don't want to just return no data because the function didn't actually finish running. So we're going to want to wait for this request. So I'm going to use a special keyword called await. So this just basically means before you finish our handle submit function, please wait for this function call to submit and to send back our data into artists.
Copy that where that space was.
But you can see there it's actually throwing an error because we can't wait for an asynchronous function inside of a non-asynchronous function. So we have to make our handle submit function asynchronous as well. So I'm going to go up to the parameters where it says events at the top, and I'm going to make this an asynchronous function with the async keyword.
Can you scroll up, Roseline?
Yes?
Can you scroll up? Where'd you put that? Did you put that?
It's at the very top of the file.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Gotcha.
yeah, you have the API key, then the show form function, and then our handle
Just the
submit.
show form. Yeah. Thank you. So not all those holdings or yeah, just this part. Show form, and she put it between.
I'll give everybody a few more seconds to catch up. After that, of course, we have our data, but it's just going to be JSON data. It's not actually being displayed to our website. It's just simply being returned into this variable. So I did provide a function called display artists.
You're doing it here, right? You're doing it here?
Yeah.
It's right here.
So I did make a function called display artist cards.
Yeah, so you're coding all
We are
this
going
stuff to the
to
screen right now.
pass in that artist array into our parameters. And the actual code for this is also on the Notion. I will copy paste it and run through it really quickly. Again, it's just more very simple HTML and CSS. So I'll give everybody just a few more, maybe like a minute more to catch up. Is there any way I can show all this at once? I can show like the last few lines. And then this.
So I had them copy the show forms one, right? And then
Yeah, copy the show form, copy paste the handle submit form.
got it.
And then after that, it looks like we're only gonna have one
Oh wait,
time.
they copied the handle submit one? I thought you coded
Oh,
all
no,
that.
yeah, I code it, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I was telling them to code it all that.
No, yeah, totally. Okay, it's already 4:40. I think we're only gonna have time to go through one API call in depth, and then probably a little bit more time to have them pseudocode another one. And then, but after that, we can just simply post the third one. I don't think I'm gonna be able to explain it,
Yeah.
but that's totally fine.
That's fine. Sweet. Just as long as you have the final code that they can access.
Yeah, that's totally fine. They only need to really see one because it's. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Wait, sorry.
Oh, you said just hold on a little bit so I can keep coding.
Oh, okay. I'll give guys another minute or so to catch up, just in case anybody else is still typing.
Wait, what?
And just as one more reminder, the show form function that we put in earlier is available on the Notion.
Oh, yeah, you're right. There's a typo.
There's a typo?
Yeah. Line 31.
What
Thank you,
line?
Gabe. The function name.
The function name? Oh, you're right. Oh, no.
That was intended. Someone's supposed to catch
No,
that.
totally.
You're going to get a cookie for that. Oh, that's good.
Okay. Okay, I think most people have been caught up by now. Skylar's still going to go around and help anybody who's still needs help. Please don't be afraid to ask. Again, this is probably a lot of content to be seeing for the first time.
Oh, you don't. It's JavaScript. So you don't.
So after our handle submit function, we, of course, need to actually search for those artists by making an API request to Spotify search endpoints. So we can do that in another function. So I'm going to create an asynchronous function because, of course, those API calls are asynchronous. So I'll use the async keyword.
So you pasted it and then you added the event list.
I'll make a function, and I'll call it search artist.
So where you stuck at?
Open up. I'll take the parameter of artists because we're going to be taking that artist name, and I'll just open up those brackets. I just want to show it to you, like where exactly I'm getting this information from. And here, you can see, is the actual endpoint we're going to be accessing. My hat. So I'm going to actually copy this. You can totally just copy it as I'm writing it in the code. But I just wanted to, again, show you guys where exactly I'm getting that. And we are going to prepare this URL to actually receive this information.
Yeah, artist, yeah.
So I'm going to make a another constant variable. I'll call it request URL. QUEST. And I'm going to set it equal to a template string. If you don't know what a template string is, you use backticks to type it. If you're, yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody should have a typical QWERTY keyboard. So it's going to be the simple symbol at the very, very top left of your keyboard, right under the escape button. Those are backticks.
If you have a Mac, or not Mac, but
Windows, yeah. If you have a Windows. If you have a Mac, it should be the same, I'm assuming. We're very similar.
Yeah, it's the same.
And I'm going to actually put that endpoint into those backticks.
Where'd you get that link again?
I got this link in the documentation. Again, if you go to the web API, you go to the sidebar, you can see the search endpoints, and it's going to show you search for item. Click that, and at the very top, right under your profile name, you have the endpoints, and it's going to actually show you the URL for it. It's going to be the same endpoint consistently, so if you miss it on the documentation or you just can't find it fast enough, you can just copy it as I have it here. That's totally fine. Give everybody just a few seconds.
You're doing amazing.
Somebody all the way back there has a question. They saw them raise their hands. Okay, so now that I have this like endpoint prepared, I'm going to pass in my actual parameters, the actual query that I want to make, because of course we can't just search nothing. Spotify's not going to know what to do with that. So I'm going to use the question mark, which just simply means, which just simply indicates these are going to be the parameters I'm going to add to this request. The first parameter that Spotify lets us add is going to be Q, which just
Open it full screen.
I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what Q means, but typically that's pretty synonymous with query. It just simply means what do you want to search for. In this case, we're searching for an artist name.
The API request to. Make sure it's in backticks.
So I'm going to pass in my artist variable by putting in a $sign and opening up brackets after where I say Q equals, and I'm going to pass in the artist variable. What this does is that once we actually submit our form and send in an artist name, whatever name we put in is going to be substituted for that artist variable. So when we actually send the API request to Spotify, they have the actual name we're looking for. So after we put that in, I also want to specify a few more parameters. So I'm going to use the AND operator for that, which just simply means this parameter and the next parameter. And then if I put another AND, then that parameter as well. So the first one I want to put in is the actual type of the search. This search endpoint is really generic. You can use it to search for artists, albums, podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. The type that I want to specifically is artist. So I'm going to say type equals artist. This specific endpoint also allows us to change the number of results that are returned, as well as what result number to start from. So I can put both of those in, and just to limit the length of the request. I don't want anything too absurd. So I'll put in another and sign to indicate this is my next parameter. And I'm going to be changing the limit now, which is just going to be the total number of search results that come from this API call. I'm going to set it to 5. You guys can set it to whatever you want to. If you want to return 100 artists, then be my guest. And then I'm also going to change the offset as well. So I'll do limits and offset, because that's another parameter. Hopefully you guys can see the whole thing. And I'm going to change the offset to, set the offset to 0, which just simply means start returning my artists from the 0th search results, which is just basically the first one. So just to recap, again, we have our URL here. This comes from the Spotify documentation. This is specifically their search endpoint for just a generic search. We're going to use the question mark operator to indicate we're now sending in additional parameters. The first one we're doing is Q, which just is simply our query, and our query is going to be that artist name. And we want to make sure that the type of the search is artists, because we only want to return artists. I'd be kind of concerned if there was a podcast that was just named Taylor Swift. I mean, there probably is, but. After that, we also want to change the limit. So we have type artist and limit is going to be equal to 5. Again, you can change that to whatever. And offset is equal to 0. You can change that to whatever as well, but I just simply want the first 5 search results that Spotify can find. So those are going to be my parameters. Another thing that the Spotify endpoint requires is for us to send in some details. And this is specifically where our API key is going to come into play. So I'm going to make an object with my actual details in them. In this case, I want to specify the method of this API request. It's going to be a get method because I want to retrieve information. And I'm going to give it a few headers as well. Headers are going to be another object. And the only header I need to send in is authorization, which is going to be another template string with the authorization of bearer. I'm going to put in a $sign and open up brackets. And this is going to be where I pass in my API key. If you don't have this code written out exactly as is, you're probably going to get an error, and the error is probably going to tell you unauthorized because if this has any sort of mistakes in it, it's not going to be able to properly identify your API key. So I'm going to give everybody like a minute more to catch up. Make sure, check your code for errors. I can also go around, help anybody that needs it. So now that we have our actual requests prepared, we actually have to call the API. So we can use JavaScript's fetch method for that to actually make that API call. So I'm going to make a constant variable called results, set it equal to fetch. I'll pass in the request URL that we just prepared, as well as our details, so they can authorize us. And since this is, again, another API call, fetch is asynchronous, so it has no obligation to finish and return our results before the actual search artist method finishes. So we do need to also use the await keyword here to make sure that our results are returned before this method ends. The data that we have from this, the data that's returned from promise And we actually need the JSON information from that promise because we actually, that's going to contain all the details that were returned from our search results. So after that, I'm going to make a constant variable again. I'll call it JSON. And this is also asynchronous because the previous function call was asynchronous as well. We need both of these to wait for, both of these to return before we let our method complete. So I'm going to call await, and then I'm going to call JSON on our results to get back the JSON contained within that API call. And just for the sake of debugging, if it helps you guys too, I'm going to log this JSON. This is especially useful just to see the actual format of result that you're getting because you don't exactly know how these developers have implemented this API. You might not know what result you're getting, the location of the location of where your data is in. There's no real way for you to tell other than reading the documentation and also just observing the JSON that you get. So for the sake of us being able to see the results and understanding what we need to get from it and how, I'm going to log this JSON so we can see what's returned in the terminal, or rather in the console, technically. This next bit of code might not make much sense until you see the API call. So before we run out of time, yeah, I think we can actually call this API. Maybe. I'm going to give everybody a few seconds to catch up, make sure the code is correct, and also make sure we can call that API. Okay, I'm seeing nods and whatnot. So this is actually basically our API call. By this time, our JSON file is going to contain all of our search results, however many or however little you wanted, or whatever you wanted. So we can actually test this, make sure it all works. And of course, I need to make one small edit to this event listener down here. This is also in the Notion, if you missed it the last time. Our button that says search. So I'm just going to add that event listener really quickly. So I'll put in an else if, and if the button text is equal to search, which is the button we just added, we just need to show form, just to make sure that our actual form for searching shows up when we click that button. Again, if you weren't here last time and you don't have the event listener for the document for when the page first loads, and it is in the Notion. All right, I'm going to assume everybody's with me. So we can actually head back to our website now. This should be it. Yeah, this is the right one. And if I click search, then now our search form opens. At this point in time, my API key is probably expired. I'm just going to search for Taylor Swift. Oh, actually, before I do that, we did have a method here we didn't define. It's probably going to return an error if we send the API request. It's just going to return an error saying like it does not know what this function is because I didn't give it to you guys yet.
Go back to the code.
I'm going to actually comment this code out
And paste the HTML, CSS into it.
because it's not fully complete yet. We just want to test the API, so let's not display the artist cards just yet.
Intro to API, it's gonna have really,
So again, in our handle submit at the function at the very top of the documents, I just commented out that little bit of code there because it's just going to return an error. We haven't handled the artist cards yet. But once we've done that, we can search. I'll just search for Taylor Swift. Nothing's going to show up, of course, because we haven't done that yet. But we should get back
copy and paste those two.
in the console, yes, our object, because we logged it in our console. Oh, and actually, let me show you guys how to access that. I'll do that one more time.
CSS one.
So once I search for an artist, for example, again, Taylor Swift, I'll click that search button. Don't think I clicked it. Probably did. And I right-clicked on my web page, and I went down to where it says Inspect at the very bottom. I clicked it, and you're probably going to see something like this. It's just all the HTML, CSS, JavaScript that's running on your page right now. Specifically, the part that you need to see for the actual, to see what's actually being logged to the console is up there where it says console. So I'm going to click that, and again, I made a few API requests on accident. These are probably all the same thing. And we can see now we get a JSON object returned, and this is all the information that Spotify has given us after we searched up Taylor Swift. The href is just simply the API request, the API call that we actually made, but what we really want is the items. These are our 5 requests as we specified, our 5 results as we specified. The first one, it's the items is returned in an array, and you can see the first one is an artist named Taylor Swift. For our artist cards, we actually want to gather some information from this API request. Oh, sorry, let me help with that first. Sorry? It's working? Okay. Yeah, okay. Let me repeat that sentence. So this is the full artist profile that Spotify has returned to us for this for 5 artists. This is a lot of information. We don't really need all of it. We just want some basic stuff, like the name of the artist, an image associated with them, the genres, the genre of their music. Taylor Swift doesn't actually have any genres. That's totally fine. And just some basic, simple information like their popularity, the number of followers, etc. So I'm going to actually edit my method to obtain this information using map, so we can actually call our display cards and display that to the screen. So I will now go back to my code, and I'm going to remove this comments, because now we're actually going to display our cards. And I'm going to go into my search artist method at the bottom of it. And if you're paying attention to the actual structure of the data, you can again see this in the documentation if you're ever working with this API on your own. But all of our results for those 5 artists were contained in the items key of that object. So I'm just going to make a constant variable again called retrieved artists.
Yeah.
Oh, oops, my bad.
So the wait function fetch details. That's in the script.
And I'm going to set it equal to JSON
Search artist.
dot items. Ooh, JSON dot artist dot items. The page refreshed, but I can show it to you again once we actually finish this method. It'll probably make a lot more sense when you see how this information is broken down.
Feature update, that's not loading. I'm hungry.
Everybody caught up? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to make another constant called cleaned artist data, and I'm going to set it equal to a method for mapping. So I'm going to use my retrieved artists object, which is going to be those 5 artists, and I'm going to call map on them. So I'm going to iterate through all of our data, and I'm going to return a object for each one of them that has just the information that we want to display. So within this, of course, every time we iterate over that object of items, each object is going to be an individual artist. So I'm going to assume, or rather, I'm just going to open up another pair of parentheses to put in artists as the variable for our anonymous function.
Guys, we're doing a workshop, so if you guys are talking, just keep it down to minimum, please. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm going to open up another pair of parentheses, which just basically means implicit return. Every time I iterate over this object, I want this new object returned back to my new to my new array. So within this map function, every time I call that artist, I want to get their ID. So I'll make a key called artist, a key called ID, and I'm going to set it equal to artist.id. Is there no way for me to, there, okay. I'm also going to take their name because I want to display that. It's going to be stored in artist.name. After that, I want the link to their Spotify page because I'm going to actually put in a button that sends them there. It's going to be an artist.external URLs.spotify for their Spotify page. I need a comma at the end. I'm going to get the number of followers that they have. So that's going to be in artists.followers.total. And I also want to get their popularity. That's a Spotify internal thing. It's just basically like how much they're trending on the charts currently. Of course, Taylor Swift is incredibly popular, so I'm assuming it's pretty high. And that's going to be stored in artist.popularity. The genre, which is going to be an artist.genres. And of course, any images that are associated with them. Not every artist actually has images on Spotify, so if you make the wrong search, it's going to turn in, it's probably going to return null. So just in case there are no images, we just want to check for that and return an empty string just to simply say no, there's no images for our source. So I'm going to open up brackets for a if statement, and I'm going to check artist.images, which is going to be an array of images associated with them. So I want to check the length of that array. And if it's greater than 0, that means there is an image that we can use. So I'm going to take the first one. That's a pretty safe bet. So I'll take artist.images at 0, and I'll take the URL of that image. Otherwise, I'm just going to return an empty string because there's just no image for us to use. That's going to be the cleaned artist data that we're going to be displaying. So I'm going to return it. I'll leave that up on the screen while you guys catch up. And any questions in the meanwhile? I felt like that was a bit on the faster side. And of course, just a review of what we've done here in the code. All of this information is coming from every artist that we iterate over using our map function. And you can tell where you can tell the keys that you're supposed to access each and every time by just simply checking the documentation or observing the actual response you get. You can't really know it, again, you're probably not some sort of clairvoyance or anything. You don't necessarily know what the Spotify developers were thinking, so it's totally fine to just check the documentation. I'm going to leave this up for about another minute. And with that cleaned artist data, we can just simply take that information, pass it through our pre-built display artist cards. And so now when you search something up in your form, you get a list of 5 artist cards displayed for you on the screen. Everyone good? Okay. I'll walk around in the meanwhile. Yep.
Probably have like a syntax error, but I can't really see like if it's
Let me see. These commas. Let me see what's this. This details, that's correct. And this items, the syntax error must be somewhere around here. Yeah, probably this. Yeah, okay, it's totally right here. I'm lying. Okay, no, that's actually the end of the object, so I'm also lying. Wait, oh no, you have these double right here. I'm thinking.
this one goes there.
Okay, hold on, let me track these parentheses. Okay, you have these two parentheses here. Down. Oh yeah, that's a good idea actually. In my specific, yeah, that'll totally work. I forgot. In my specific version of it, I just let them with the commas. That's probably smart. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, where is? Do you have an extra parenthesis or just not enough? Because I'm not seeing any. Yeah, one parenthesis.
Map has one.
So two parentheses for map, you enclose this in parentheses. It looks like you're missing a set of parentheses because it's this, artist images.length. This is extra. Yes?
Sorry, like I don't know if I messed something up, but like as I was adding the new code, everything just stopped working for me.
Sorry. This needs to be asynchronous.
You didn't save it.
Oh, okay, sorry. Control S.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Everyone else good? Need one more minute, maybe? Okay. So now that we have specific card, and I changed the inner HTML to just format out what that card looks like. So you can kind of just see the basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript there. I put in a few template strings as well to actually integrate the artist's details for each and every artist. So of course, if we have an image available, then we can use the image. Otherwise, I just put in a default Spotify logo. We have an H4 with our actual artist name. We're going to access that using the name attributes. We display the genres, the followers, the popularity, and the link for the actual Spotify page, as we said before. And then after that, the next part of this program would technically give the card an event listener so that if you were to click on that artist card, it would send another API request to return all their albums. We might run out of time before that, so I'm probably going to just provide the code after the workshop, but just to clarify what exactly that means, this is just going to be an event listener that listens for that. Since we don't have that code integrated just yet, I'm actually going to comment out this last line. And then, of course, at the very end, we can append each and every one of our new cards to our old card container so they appear in a nice vertical line. Yeah, I'll leave this code up a little bit. Give everybody a few seconds to make sure they're here. And then also...
I want to do a presentation really quick.
Oh, no, cool, okay. Yeah, and then after this, given that this works, I'm going to give it to you guys for deployment.
Yeah. Go for it.
Is it a good break? Yes? Okay. Hey guys, so like I said in the beginning, for the people who have attended all 3 of the workshops and filled out those surveys for me, we're going to give you guys your Explore Web Dev merge. I know some of your names, but not all of them, so I'm going to call your names, and if I do, I'm just probably going to point at you and you'll still have to come up to me anyway. Okay. Christian? Yeah. And then Nicholas? We also have cookies if you guys want to grab one, Susanna, when you come up. Perla? Yes. Valeria Aguilar? Yeah. Hamza? Nice.
While she's doing that, do you mind if I use your laptop to update the code a little?
Assad?
I just realized I did not give them the CSS. So their thing is going to show up.
CSS, yeah, because the search button wasn't
Yeah.
coming up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was trying to show them the thing, I had the button and the class and all that stuff, but it wasn't like popping up.
Seriously? That's weird. Okay.
So I might have to help them by telling them just to stay up later on.
Yeah, the CSS I used for the button was old CSS, so I'm surprised it wasn't showing up. But anyway, Spotify
But
did.
do you have anything else left to add after this, or?
No, actually, after this we're just gonna test it.
Test real quick.
If you want to, yeah. If it were to return an error, like just know I'm gonna run outside and.
I really, really do want to thank you guys for taking time out of your days every week.
Oh, the last sprinkle.
Things are fully under control, and you're not obligated to be here, but I really appreciate you guys making time to come out, learn something new, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if you guys caught a little glimpse of what we were doing right there, I did test the API, and we do get back exactly what we had separated out from that data. We get the artist image, we get their actual name, the their genre, the number of followers, and the popularity as returned by Spotify. I didn't give you guys the CSS, so I'm going to update the Notion really quickly to actually implement that. Wait, Skylar, where in the Notion is the API thing? the Notion. I want to update the code just to give them the CSS for these things. I just wanted
Wait,
to
where the Notion is for the code?
yeah, where like
It's on the API deploying Notion.
like where exactly in your Notion is it though?
Oh, in my Notion?
Yeah.
Oh, you click it.
That's Skylar House. Okay.
Yep. That's the intro to JavaScript, and the other one's the intro to.
Yeah, intro to APIs, code. Just make that really quick.
Sweet. We're not done yet, guys. We still got to deploy the site. So if you guys want to stay, we're going to be deploying it so that way you can actually show people and just send them a link. So we're going to do that really quickly. So you guys should have this site pretty much how it is. If it isn't, it's good. We're going to share the code later too, so it's going to look a little prettier. But for now, I want you guys to go to either the Notion and search up Netlify, or you can just go to netlify.com.
Wait, did you commit it?
Oh, yeah. So before that, we want you guys to commit it. So you're going to go down here. You're going to do get add. You're going to do get commit. You can do a message. Oops.
Sorry.
So get commit.
Oh, it's still failed to.
API.
Oh, okay then. Blocks by cores. Okay, that's cute.
Deployment. And then we're going to do get push. All right. All right, sweet. Now we have the code, so now we can deploy it. So now you can show it to friends and family and stuff like that. So this is my favorite part.
Okay, cores policy.
So now that-
authorization. What the heck might have happened?
Yep, okay, perfect. Awesome, awesome. So we're going to go to here.
Sorry.
Going to go to netlify.com. What this is a hosting platform.
Oh, why didn't
Pretty
it
much
say
when it comes to
request?
hosting,
Okay.
keep in mind it's like
Let me
we're going to
check
be
that code.
doing a serverless cloud hosting. So it's pretty much a way so that way we can go to like google.com, netflix.com, that thing that kind of pops up. So I like to use Netlify. There's other ones. There's Hostinger, Firebase hosting. There's different ones you can experiment, but for now we're going to be using Netlify because it's a little bit easier when it comes to GitHub. So you're going to go to sign up or log in. You can create an account. Roseline already has one. So once you guys go through that process, it's going to prompt you with a build.
It's this. It's
Right.
not detecting your API.
So actually,
this needs to be a
take
template.
this one.
No.
I'm going to delete this one just that way you guys can see from the start how it looks.
So if you change this to backticks, actually, then this should light up,
Boop.
and you'll get the. It's going to take in your API key. So when you make that API request, it's
What?
actually going to put your key in there. What was happening is that you were literally
So
sending an
it
API key
should
called
look
API
something like
key,
this.
and
You don't
Spotify
see any
was like,
builds. You don't
not
see any
really.
sites.
Probably not.
Right, so we want to deploy. How are we going to do
So
that?
command S.
Well, you're going to
You
just
can probably try that again. Okay, that's totally fine. Has been blocked by cores policy. That's interesting. Header is present on the request. Okay. To no cores. Is this a Mac thing?
a name. Now, by default, it's going to give you something like netlify.app. A bunch of other letters. If you guys want to go a little bit extra miles, you can actually add domains, so you can do custom domains. But we're not going to do that for that, so we're just going to leave it by default. You're going to do the branch deploy, which is main, base directly, build command. You don't have to worry about anything else. You're just going to deploy. Click the green button. It's going to deploy, and then once it finishes deploying, you'll see something like this, where it says site deploying progress. It's still deploying. So what it's doing basically is it's taking our code, it's putting it on a hosting server, and it's pretty much allowing other people to access it. So you know how in VS Code and IntelliJ, you can't really just share your code with someone. It doesn't really work like that. Well, this way on hosting, we're basically taking our code, we're giving it a domain name and a domain site, and when people search that name or site from any device, they can pretty much see our code, which is pretty cool. So it says it's now deployed. So you can either search that one or do that, or if you see how it says Curious, Toffee, and a bunch of letters, when you click that, your Spotify app should be deployed. And what's really cool is like if we take this, right, and you can search on your phone, you can send it to people and stuff like that. When you paste it, it'll come up again. So that's pretty much deploying. Yes, question? If someone has a question, we're going around helping you deploy. But other than that, all we ask is at the very end, if you guys have a moment, we have some ideas for projects for Cohort. So this was the first cohort of 2 this semester. We're basically doing the same thing after spring break, but we're going to be doing a different project. So if this is something that you guys really enjoy, maybe it's something that's like the type of code that you guys want to learn, we're going to be doing something similar, but a different project. So before you guys leave, we would appreciate if you guys could just scan this QR code. So this is like deploying, what it is, cloud hosting, that's what we're doing. And then this is some examples. So you have Vercel, that's a little bit popular one too, Hostinger. So just fill out this QR code. It's really simple. It just lets us know, like feedback-wise, what you guys want to see next cohort. It's really important, and we actually value it because we'll be using that for the next cohort. So, but yeah, thank you guys for coming. That's pretty much it. We're going to be here for a little bit longer if you guys have any questions, any bugs and stuff like that. And then we'll be posting the final code as well on the Notion too. So that way if you guys want to add different stuff or edit stuff. But yeah, thank you guys.